Hi people, Moino from again as always, and as usual. Yeah, I'm going to do someone's natal chart again briefly. Another famous individual or well-known individual, and that is no one other but Marie Curie, or Marie Curie. I'll be referring to her as Marie Curie from now on. The Polish-French scientist that's well known for, if I remember correctly, radiation or plutonium. In any case, she's the woman that was the very first scientist to develop either atom-based energy usage or something along those lines. In any case, something akin to radiation. So yeah, I'm not going to talk too much. We all know who Marie Curie is, of course, including me, but specifically what she did, I can't really remember, but I do know what I said in relation to what I said, that is the case. Okay, she was involved in radiation or heavily similar. In any case, she pioneered atom-based energy and using radiation as a source of energy. Now, before I continue, you can check out her wiki entry in the description as usual and or as always, as well as a corresponding video from, so essentially a biographical, shortly summarized video about her life. And this is the first reading that I'm doing that I have not taken a look at beforehand. So this is essentially a literally live reading or a literal live reading that I'm doing. So I didn't look at it beforehand briefly for a couple of minutes and then I decided to record the video. I literally just filled in her birth information, confirmed it, and yeah, the rest is recent history. She was born at 6:45 p.m. I used my occult power to see what time it was, and yeah, 6:45 p.m. is when she was born. In Warsaw, Poland, Warszawa, and November the 6th, 1867. NS simply stands for New Style Calendar because before that, that was the year when, not the year, but around that time is when we stopped using old school calendars and we switched to the New Style Calendar, New Style system. If I remember correctly, the old school calendar, the year began and ended in March or something like that, or in April. It's simply a reference to the Gregorian calendar system and the, forgot what the other one was called. We use one of the two, the modern one, I forgot. I think Caesarean calendar. We use the Gregorian calendar, and before that, the Caesarean calendar was used, named after Julius Caesar, Roman emperor. It's one of the two, okay? If it's not that, it's the other. In any case, all the birth information checks out, so let's get going. Looks quite interesting, very interesting even. I did not want to do a warlord this time or someone that was well known for warfare related purposes, you name it. Something else, something different this time, just for a change of pace of things, or for the sheer sake of changing things up for the sake of variety. Anyways, Uranus is in Cancer, which is generally speaking strong. Uranus does well in all water signs, let it be noted, but it's going retrograde, so that means that it's afflicted. That means by default that Marie Curie was someone that suffered from bipolar disorder, honestly, regardless of whether it was officially diagnosed or she was diagnosed with that or not. But this stands for a heavy inclination towards unstable behavior, especially at an emotional level and regarding domestic affairs and whatnot. She really, just to say, she was like the wind. She literally went like a thingy. She was like the chime of a clock, essentially going up and down, up and down. So yeah, she really went between back and forth and also suffered from erraticness and mood swings and whatnot. But despite the fact that Uranus is afflicted here, it stands for a strong interest in technology. Moving on, we have the Sun, Saturn, Venus, and Mars all in Scorpio. Now, the Sun in Scorpio in the 5th house, conjunct the 6th house, stands for the fact that she, generally speaking, as well as the rest, that she had a strong sex drive, a very strong sex drive. Let me see. And that she more often than not liked to be dominated. That's why the Sun is opposed Pluto. She liked to be dominated. She liked to either do the dominating or like to be dominated. So essentially, Marie Curie had like a BDSM thing going on. She enjoyed either submitting people to her will or the people that she had sex with, or the opposite, provided she had sex to begin with. Okay, this could also mean the opposite. She either had a ridiculously strong sex drive, or it was the exact opposite. There was an absolute lack of a sex drive. That's why Sun is opposed Pluto. One of the two, or a combination of both, and manifesting in terms of intermittency. Um, it being in the fifth house stands for the fact that she was a good researcher. The fact that the rest is there as well in Scorpio is a great makes for a great researcher. She's not someone that left anything to chance. That's one of the default traits of Scorpio: determination. Essentially, getting into the bottom or getting down to the bottom of things, the bottom of matters, regardless of how much time it takes and regardless of the cost at oneself. So she's not something that left any table or stone unturned. Nope, she left none unturned, and she wanted to get down to the bottom of things, of anything that, if any argument, anything of a speculative nature, anything regarding her research or her work. That's why the Sun is conjunct Scorpio, as well as the fact that all the three other Saturn, Venus, and Mars are also in Scorpio. Let me see what else. There is also a chance that she suffered from stillbirths, that she might have given birth to one or two children, and those children, they were miscarriages or similar. Because the reason I say that is because the Sun in Scorpio usually deals with death in general. It has an affinity of death around it, especially the rest as well. And in the fifth house deals with essentially conception, child conception. Either that or she was barren. One of the two, like I said, something, or at the very least something along those lines. That's what it indicates at a superficial level. Now, moving on. Saturn, Venus, and Mars. All there indicates that, specifically Mars indicates that she had a tremendously strong drive towards her work. That's why it's in the sixth house. Work was essentially her life. She had no life really outside of work, or very little in the way of life outside of work. She was all about her work. That's why the house is also so ridiculously big. And notice that her first house and the seventh house are ridiculously small. The seventh house is small, indicating that she had a very small group of people close to her, if any at all. So it's possible that she had no people close to her. I also need to note that Uranus is conjunct the second house, which is also small, which stands for the fact that she also had difficulty with finances. She might have prospered briefly, but she, in hypothetically speaking, mysterious ways, sudden and unexpected ways, ways or manners, all of a sudden lost a lot of money. And as a result, she ended up being broke, generally speaking, throughout her life. Yeah, that's also why the second house is so small. Third house also indicates that she didn't really have a lot in day-to-day life, a lot going for her. The fifth and the sixth house, okay, are the biggest. Oh boy, so prominent. And of course, on the opposite ends, the 10th and the 11th house, as well as the 12th house. Now, again, like I said, Mars in Scorpio at its strongest in the sixth house stands for the fact that she was very ultra committed to her work. She was very super intense. She had a strong desire to perfect her work. Venus in Scorpio says the same thing as well. And Saturn in Scorpio in the sixth house, just like Venus, stands for the fact that she was quite disciplined when it came to her work. Although work did make her nervous and erratic, and just the same things that Uranus says in general, that she suffered from anxiety. She worked herself to the bone and then some, to the point where work essentially stressed her out, to the point where she became almost like spastic, mentally or physically, or a combination of both. Even the Sun is conjunct the sixth house, a perfect conjunction, separated only by 8 minutes, literally only 8 minutes. Now, Mercury is in Sagittarius, one of the weakest signs Mercury can be in, because Mercury rules Gemini, and Gemini opposes Sagittarius. That, generally speaking, stands for the fact that she had a tendency to be impetuous, and she literally had a tendency to be excessive in terms of her work. All she could do was think about work. Mercury stands for her mind, so her thought processes, her way of thinking, or her line of thinking. And Sagittarius simply stands for an abundance thereof to near excess levels, especially considering the fact that Mercury is conjunct Mars. Let me see. The conjunction goes all the way to 28 degrees. So Mars, it's not conjunct Venus or Saturn. It's only conjunct Mars, but still, the Mars only adds a lot more fuel to the fire. So yeah, she's just, again, Mercury was simply just a workaholic in the finest sense. He pretty much defines being a workaholic. Before I continue to Lilith, let me just discuss, I'll discuss the North Node and the South Node at the end. They're both going stationary, and the North Node is in Virgo, South Node is in Pisces, Virgo y Pisces. Now, Lilith is in Capricorn, opposed Uranus, 16 degrees in Capricorn, the weakest sign Lilith can be in, and it's conjunct the 8th house. That simply stands for the fact that Mercury had a, generally speaking, obscured knack or an obscured ability or trait for being cold towards others. So there was a hidden desire to do socialize with people, and to have close friends, but that was completely, essentially, it was heavily overshadowed, utterly, completely overshadowed by the fact that she was so cold and emotionless, honestly. And yeah, as a result, any friends she had, any contacts she had, any close friends, relatives, anyone that you can see as or view as a loved one, out of nowhere, she just exiled them out of their life, or yeah, out of her life. I mean, she just completely pushed them out of her life, or she just vanished, or vice versa. These people vanished out of nowhere because they can't stand the fact that she's so cold and she's like a bitch, and no one cares about someone that's so cold and calculated and can't show the slightest bit of emotion. Someone that is so inanimate, in a matter of speaking, so robotic and so emotionless, just cold. And of course, Lilith is conjunct Capricorn, also at its weakest. The conjunction even is weak, indicating, the problems she had financially. She barely made any money from her ventures, and whatever money she made, or whatever money she made, she just lost it for the aforementioned reasons. Now, moving on to more rosier pastures. The part of fortune is in Aquarius conjunct midheaven, also in Aquarius, conjunct Jupiter, also in Aquarius. People watching this, the part of fortune is arguably at its strongest in Aquarius. And the part of fortune stands for where someone will accomplish tremendous successes in their life. And generally speaking, so a success factor, the ultimate success factor. And it's in the house of Capricorn, the house that deals with ambition. Aquarius stands for technology. You connect the dots, viewer, or you do the math, viewers. The part of fortune is conjunct Jupiter and conjunct midheaven. Stands for a devastating level of success. A character trait or character traits that bestow devastating levels of success. Specifically in technology, okay? Technology that will be used for the masses or towards the masses, and all of it is in the house of Capricorn. I don't need to say anything else. You can see why Marie Curie is who she is, or was who she was. Now, moving on, you have the moon and Chiron in Pisces. Oh boy, a ridiculously strong position for the moon. Chiron in Pisces at its weakest, not to mention the fact that it's going retrograde. The moon in Pisces here stands for the fact that Marie Curie liked to work in secret. She wasn't really someone that liked the limelight. She wanted to do things behind the scenes. And she was also very sensitive. She did have a sensitive side about her and a sympathetic side. The moon is also positively aspected to Saturn and Venus, and yeah, also Mars, but it's off by 1 degree. But it's also sextile, it's trine all of these. So the moon is trine Saturn, Venus, and borderline Mars, and it's sextile Pluto. With Pluto is in Taurus going retrograde. It's also trine Uranus, and look, see, they almost form a grand trine, but yeah, it's off by how much? Let me say 12, minus 8, off by 4 to 5 degrees. Okay, if Uranus was like 16 degrees, 17 degrees in Aquarius, then it would be a grand trine, because the moon would be connected to Uranus and Saturn would also be connected to Uranus. There is a grand trine between the moon, the sun, and Uranus, though, or vice versa. The moon, Uranus, and the sun. It simply stands for her level of clairvoyance, her level of sensibility, the fact that she has natural psychic abilities, and that I think she also saw spirits throughout her life, 1 or 2 spirits. She had like psychic experiences. But of course, it essentially had like a numbing effect on her mentally. Bottom line is that grand trine, that huge triangle that you're seeing here that connects these 3 planets, the moon, Uranus, and the sun. Despite the fact that Uranus is afflicted, stands for and the sun is so strong, the sun is in the house that it rules over, stands for the fact that, her technological ability, her natural technological affinity, her level of delving into the deepest of matters, not leaving any stone unturned, devastating levels of accuracy, and her psychic abilities were in near perfect harmony with each other. despite all of that, the moon is in the weakest house it can be, in the 10th house, the house that Capricorn rules over. It's the house that opposes Cancer's house, or the moon's house. So yeah, now the moon is on the one hand very strong, zodiacally speaking, but house-wise, it is at its weakest, which stands for the fact, like I said, she was sympathetic and whatnot, but at the same time, she was like conflicted. Again, it just further supports what Uranus is already saying. She was very, very bipolar. She could be literally happy 1 second and then, or sympathetic 1 second, and then ultra cold to the point where you can drop dead in front of me, I don't care. The next, especially regarding when it came to her work and being ambitious. The whole sympathy and stuff like that is purely, generally speaking, meant within her general life overall, honestly, towards anybody she came into contact with. The moon is also conjunct the 11th house, which essentially stands for the way that she saw the public. She did not like associating with anybody, honestly. Anybody that she associated with, any publicity she received, automatically made it so that she kept things hidden, honestly, things for herself. She only publicized what was absolutely necessary, and she, generally speaking, had no issue in dealing with people, so to speak, from a neutral perspective, so strangers. But I'm sorry, I'm just briefly pausing. But yeah, how do I put this? She could socialize with people, but usually when she socialized with people, she essentially was sympathetic in doing so. She was like a quiet, timid woman that was very kind and gentle. Chiron going retrograde in the weakest sign, Pisces, it can possibly be, and honestly, because Chiron is the so-called modern ruler of Pisces, of Virgo, and Virgo opposes Pisces, stands for the fact that Mercury was, she literally did not want anyone. She concealed her work like to the fullest of extents. She did not want to share anything with anyone. She did not want to pass any knowledge on with to anyone unless it was absolutely necessary. It's unlikely, but there's also a minor chance that she sometimes had a tendency to go overboard. If she saw someone she was that really warmed up to her or something, then she had a tendency to sometimes just let loose and spill the beans, say or divulge a lot more than she was supposed to, so to speak, by her own standards. Neptune in Aries going retrograde. Neptune is strong in Aries in general. Good deal of clairvoyant capabilities, and what the moon already says, psychic abilities, but it's going retrograde. It stands for the fact that, like I said, she was generally speaking very reclusive, and she shunned people, and she was aggressive with whenever people wanted to come near her. Publicity, generally speaking, brought out like inner rage in her, and that's all that Neptune says in general. Honestly, she did have again a heavy amount of spiritual affinity to her, and she used that to accomplish her goals. Um, Pluto is going retrograde in Taurus. Pluto already doesn't function well in Taurus, arguably the weakest sign Pluto can be in. Yeah, Pluto isn't the weakest sign it can be in. Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. And Pluto is, instead of being strong, weak as fuck in Taurus, going retrograde, which only makes it even weaker, oh boy. This stands for the fact that Mercury honestly had a ridiculous amount of, like, how do I put this? A ridiculous amount of lack of willpower going for her, only in the sense of essentially not being stable, especially when it came to finances, when it came to essentially dealing with finances and seeing to it that she's well off financially, and also Mercury had a tendency to be slow in relation to affairs that happened in secret. She literally did not want, she didn't want to do anything, honestly, and preferred literally just keeping to herself or sticking to herself, um, and it just, she was ridiculously slow, honestly, behind the scenes. She's not a fast thinker. She's not like, she doesn't have a quick wit about her. She's not witty. She's like the exact opposite of witty. She's like super, super slow. You know, when it came to being like mentally, she was like she was like a snail in secret. Now, Let me see. And again, like I said, she could be that, and then all of a sudden she could be the exact opposite. Her entire chart, just her entire the entire constellation she was born under, just screams ultra, 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 ultra legendary bipolarness. A lot of stuff opposes itself or is negatively aspected. This entire cluster, with the exception of Mercury, is square the part of fortune, square Jupiter, square midheaven. Her natural abilities did not. Her natural scientific abilities came into conflict with her level of intensity. She was sometimes too intense, like I said, to the point where she burnt out. She literally worked herself to death. And not just that, she has like how many planets going retrograde? Two planets, Neptune and Cancer, and thingy, and Uranus and Pluto. The modern planets are all going retrograde. Her classical planets are strong. Jupiter is strengthened by the power of fortune and midheaven. The moon is naturally strong. Mars is at its strongest. Venus is also weak, and Saturn not doing all too well in Scorpio, but not too bad either. And the moon, the sun is like neutral in Scorpio. And Lilith is also weak. Yeah, so yeah, last but not least, midheaven is in Aquarius, and the ascendant is in Cancer. Yeah, essentially the strong water-based influence from the element water. All of this wateriness is the reason she was so bipolar. Okay, people that have a tendency to be emotionally intense have also a tendency to be emotionally unstable, especially women, and especially you'll see it with people that have a strong Pisces influence as well, you name it. And for the rest, her second strongest influence is air. And yeah, that's essentially it. She only has two planets in fire signs, so Neptune and Mercury respectively. Mercury is in Sagittarius, Neptune is in Aries, and she has five in water. Sorry, six in water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She has only one in air, but the power of fortune and midheaven definitely more than make up for that and hopelessly excel past any limitations. And only one in an earth sign, which is Pluto and Taurus, obviously. Pluto is also conjunct the 12th house. Yeah, so a tremendous lack of movement for her at a mental level, at an emotional level. She was very frigid. Yeah, last but not least, the nodes. Okay, the North Node is in Virgo, going stationary, it's standing still. In the 4th house, which stands for the fact that Mercury should have she should have found a healthy balance between work and her domestic life. And the South Node says the exact opposite, that she was already emotionally invested to maximum levels in her work and her desire for recognition and honor regarding her career overall. I'm going to do something that I've never done before. Usually I would stop the video here, but I'm also going to check out the sign elements. See, barely anything in, look at that, see, the sign elements, the weight score. Earth is weakest and water is its absolute strongest. Okay, air comes in second place. Yeah, Mercury was definitely very emotionally intense, very emotional. Her source of strength is emotion. She had raw occult power, and she combined that with her natural technological ability to accomplish all the things she has. But of course, the drawback of such a personality is that she was ridiculously unstable mentally, like emotionally, just like just legendary levels of bipolarness right here for you. In any case, that's all, guys. Bye.